Hello, Val. Thanks so much for joining our Heads Up podcast today.
Hello, Charlotte. It's good to speak to you this morning.
Yeah, you too. So first, I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about your story and sort of what it's like living with cluster headache.
Yeah, sure. I'm now in my mid-60s, and I've been a cluster headache sufferer since the age of 10. But I wasn't diagnosed until I was 50. By which time,
it's a long time.
Yeah, and by that time, I had become a chronic sufferer. As you may or may not know, there are two types of cluster headache. One is episodic, where you get attacks over a period of weeks or months, and they'll go away as suddenly as they started, but they will come back. And the gap between can be weeks, months, years sometimes.
Right.
That's the more common form of cluster headache. And chronic cluster headache is where you have attacks anything from 1 to 6 times a day, 365 days of the year, and you get little or no respite. Any respite is less than 4 weeks in any 12-month period. So by the time I was diagnosed, I was a chronic sufferer. It's at that time, which is about 18 years ago now, it wasn't particularly well known, and I was told that it was severe migraine, go away and learn to live with it. A more enlightened consultant said, I think you've got cluster headache. I contacted Migraine Action, and they then put me in touch with both the National Migraine Centre and also Ouch UK. And I spoke to the advice line there, and through them I got an appointment to be seen at the National Neurological Hospital in London, and I was then diagnosed as chronic cluster headache sufferer.
Was it kind of a relief getting a proper diagnosis, or?
Yes, it was, and I'll be very honest with you. I burst into tears because I had a lot of chronic sufferers that are undiagnosed, or even the episodics who are undiagnosed. The relief of knowing what it is, you begin to think that I must have a brain tumour, and then you start to think, well, am I bringing this on myself? Is it me? Is it psychosomatic? Am I doing something to make myself have these headaches? And you start going down a horrible road where you think it's your fault, and it's not. So to me, it was a huge release to have a name, and also I then heard, what I could possibly treat it with, and went on from there. And at the moment, coming forward 18 years, during that time, I was up until 2008. I was having anything sort of half a dozen attacks a day, lasting anything from 15 minutes, half an hour, up to 2 or 3 hours. I think the worst I ever had one day was 9 hours.
And what does it feel like for someone that, maybe isn't
I
can't even imagine.
Well, the pain is centered around the eye, usually, around that area. On one side, it's generally speaking, it sits unilateral, but it can change sides, and you can have it in some rare cases, both sides. But the pain is excruciating. I mean, it's not a case of don't lie down. You can't lie down. You're extremely restless. The pain is excruciating, centered around the eye. Your eye will water. It can redden. Your nose can become blocked or runny. You can get further pain down your jawline and in the neck and shoulder. But it is literally, the way I describe it, is like someone trying to drive a knitting needle through my ear, while at the same time they're trying to claw out my eye.
Oh my gosh.
And there was a case where a gentleman removed his eye. This is going to sound awful, but it's true. He removed his eye with a spoon because he thought that would relieve the pain. That is the extreme, that this pain can drive you to, and I've literally banged my head on walls, doors, anything to try and shift the pain, and I will quite frequently hit my head with the heel of my hand, and it's just a mechanism to distract, to try and get rid of the pain. It's quite primeval, actually. You react to it.
Yeah,
And
the word cluster headache doesn't almost really give
it
you a good.
no, it is said that it is said by neurologists that it is the most painful condition known to mankind. However, whatever the correct PC term is, and we know of war veterans who've been injured by gunshot or whatever, and they've said it's worse than being shot. And the commonest of all is female sufferers who have had children will say that, and I said it myself, this is worse than childbirth. You imagine going through childbirth 1 to 4 times a day with nothing to treat it with, because you're not yet diagnosed. But it was very hard at first to try and come to terms with it. You've been battered several times a day by this pain, and if you're undiagnosed and you haven't seen a headache neurologist, some people can go through weeks, sometimes months, even years of hell before they get a diagnosis. But I treat my cluster headaches with high flow oxygen and the injections of a drug called sumatriptan. The brand name for it is Imigran, but you're limited. You can only have 2 of those in a day. So I use oxygen as a backup, and if I can get to it quick enough during the day, I can get rid of attacks with just high flow oxygen. But it means
really important getting the right diagnosis and getting the right treatment.
Yeah, that's the difficulty that a lot of people have, because GPs very often don't know about it. They may say, oh, I'll refer you to a neurologist, but what they don't appreciate is that you really need to be referred to a headache neurologist. And there's a good few in the UK now. And calling Ouch was how I found a headache neurologist at the National Neurological Hospital in London. That is that once you've got a diagnosis from a headache neurologist, they then write to your GP confirming the diagnosis and with treatment recommendations. So if you've got a headache neurologist who's saying that, the GP will be more confident in prescribing, but they're reluctant to diagnose you correctly. They send you, quite rightly, they will send you to the nearest neurologist, and he may or may not be a neurologist, So it's a bit of roulette,
and I guess it's sort of quite a rare sort of condition. So a lot of GPs won't have seen it.
Yeah, we don't have a precise figure, but there could be 1 in 1,000 sufferers. Some GPs may never see a case at all in their professional life, and at most they probably have 1 or 2 in the practice. But there could be anywhere between 68,000 and 100,000 sufferers in the UK. Many of those are either undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, and that's frequently.
And that's the thing we need to raise awareness about, don't we?
Yeah. So the key is to hopefully you find a GP that will refer you to a headache neurologist and will also prescribe appropriately. They may well be prepared to prescribe what is suggested, but they do so in penny pinching amounts. And that's not a criticism, because the injections are expensive. But where cluster headache is concerned, the injections, you're limited to 2 a day. So if you're having, you're using those 2 a day, you can get rid of 14 injections in a week. If it's prescribed for migraine, the migraine sufferer is not expected to have that many attacks in that time frame, and they expect us to have the same usage as a migraine sufferer, and it isn't. It's completely different. But talking to the prescribing advisor, a clinical commissioning group, each area in the UK has a clinical commissioning group, and the GP practices in that area can talk to them. And the patients can, to find out, what the prescribing guidelines are for cluster headache.
Yeah.
The guidelines, NICE, the National Institute for Healthcare and Clinical Excellence, back in 2016, they brought out guidelines specifically written for GPs on all of the headache conditions, not just cluster headache, but all of them. And it does state in there, you know, prescribe high flow oxygen, sufficient doses for, you know, a cluster headache sufferer, referral to a headache neurologist. You know, they're quite clear, quite specific on it. So there are guidelines there for the GPs. And of course, the GP's prescribing Bible, the British National Formulary, the good old BNF.
Yes.
If a GP looks up cluster headache in there, they'll see much the same thing. Sumatriptan injections or nasal sprays, high flow oxygen, and the standard prevent medication is verapamil, which is a calcium channel blocker, but it can work quite well in keeping down cluster headache. And of course, NICE also emphasizes the referral to a headache neurologist, and that can make all the difference to people. Personally, and I've spoken to a lot of other sufferers in the UK, knowing what you're dealing with is half the battle. If you've got a confirmed diagnosis, when you don't know what it is, you're in a complete muddle and you don't know which way to go, who to talk to. But if you've got to getting that confirmed diagnosis has a great bearing on how you're able to deal with your particular headache condition, whatever it is.
So you're a trustee of Ouch now.
Yes,
that's right.
I am.
Yeah. So for our listeners who don't know about Ouch, could you let them know a little bit about what it is and what services Ouch provides?
Right. Well, Ouch, the Organisation for the Understanding of Cluster Headache.
Great name.
Yeah, I know. It's great, isn't it? And it's a UK-wide organisation, whole of the UK. But we do have some members from all over the world. And at present, we are the largest cluster headache support organisation in the world, online. I must stress online. It was formed in July 2002. And we operate a helpline, or advice line, I should say. Our aims are to support sufferers of cluster headache and their families and supporters too, because just a sufferer, it affects the whole family. To liaise with the medical profession, to encourage our members to assist with research projects, and they do, and to produce information on cluster headache. We have a website which we maintain, which has information on cluster headache, what it is, how it's treated, what to ask for, who to ask for it. All information is there. But our advice line, I would say, is probably the single most important service that we offer. And it is staffed by everybody who does something for Ouch. They're all volunteers. It's run on an entirely voluntary basis.
Oh, wow.
But everybody who is on the helpline is a sufferer.
So they know how it feels.
Well, it's important, you know, if we were rich enough, we could have a bank of phones and people answering it and a sheet of information. But it's never the same as talking to somebody who suffers with what you've got. There's that immediate understanding, that immediate empathy. And you find that people will relax a bit then, and they will talk more openly to you because they know that you understand, where they can be a little more reticent with someone who's got no idea really what it is, you know. It can be quite emotional.
I can imagine.
That they're just so relieved that somebody knows what they're talking about. But we have to emphasize we're not health professionals. We can't diagnose or prescribe. But what we can do is point them in the right direction, make suggestions for, you know, what they can ask their GP for, give them guidance on how to get a referral to a headache neurologist. And I think that is the thing that we do best. And it's, as far as I'm aware, it's the only cluster headache advice line available in the world. You know, we might be a small nation, but we're well in one area. We rather wish it was a different one, but we are leading the world. And everybody gives their time freely, as I say. We also organise meetings throughout the UK. We try to move them around so that once every couple of years there should be a meeting somewhere near you. And if members want to organise a little get-together themselves, say in a cafe or something like that, we will encourage them. We'll try and send someone along who can facilitate discussion or, answer questions there. We'll support them. And we have a wonderful army of people who fundraise for us and do the most hair-raising things. There's one of those... aerial slides, it's quite a hair-raising one in North Wales. They've done that. People have climbed mountains. One gentleman sailed around the UK for us. People have had haircuts. They've done extraordinary things, and I never cease to be amazed at their ingenuity. We also have had teams in the London 10K, and I've done the London 10K myself 4 times for Ouch.
Wow. It just shows how much an organization like that means to people, to be honest.
Yeah, it does, and I was glad to do it. It got me fit, and it perhaps helped a bit. I don't know. But I had to carry my portable oxygen with me because I'd never know when I'm gonna get an attack. So I got some funny looks from the crowd, but I didn't care. I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
There's nothing like London on a lovely summer day, and the atmosphere is great. But anyway, there are many people who've done wonderful, wonderful things for Ouch. So, and that's how we keep going, by subscriptions, membership subscriptions, and voluntary donations. But
yeah. And what do the sort of members get? If you become a member of Ouch, what sort of?
If you become a member of Ouch, you get a membership pack, which will include in full information on cluster headache. You'll get a little information card, which gives the Ouch contact details on the front, and on the back it's a brief description of cluster headache and what's happening to you, because early on there were a lot of people who pulled to the side of the road perhaps to deal with an attack, or were taken ill in the street. And because when you're in the throes of such pain, you can't talk, you can't think, you can't do anything. But if you hand them this card, on the back it tells them what is happening to you, that you don't need an ambulance, that you have got your medication with you, and you will be all right in a short time. And that was received, people are buying them from our website 5 at a time, but you get one free when you join them. And people were actually being breathalyzed by the police because they weren't able to talk. And you can imagine they're groaning, and they could appear to be under the influence of something, And that has been very useful and has saved people a lot of trouble with the police when they've been stopped,
Yeah.
And we're hoping we've been asked for them in foreign languages. Well, hopefully what we will do is to be able to put them on our website, and people can download the translation that they need, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
We couldn't produce a dozen in different languages. It would be hugely expensive, but if somebody can download it, that may be a help to them. So you also get discounts on tickets for our events, and you also get first refusal on tickets. You get notified first about any Ouch events. You also get notified first about any research trials that are coming up, and you get priority to apply to take part. Of course, there's our website as well, and we have a members forum on the website. We do have a Facebook group. And the other, of course, we produce an online magazine which members have access to. They log into the website and they can read the magazine with what we've been up to, who's done what to raise funds for us, what's going on in the medical world, news about things going on in the media and so forth. So we try to keep our members as up to date as possible.
And if a sufferer is sort of having any issues with sort of employment, do you sort of help with that kind of thing as well?
Yes, we can. Yeah. If we don't know the answers ourselves, we can certainly point people in the right direction. But we can assist with general advice on employment rights and also on benefits, because cluster headache is a disability. And as such, there are certain things that employers need to abide by if they have a disabled employee. And for instance, one of those things is that any absence for anything other than cluster headache must be recorded separately. They can't lump it all together saying you've been off X number of weeks, we're going to fire you or whatever. It has to be so many weeks for cluster headache and so many weeks for whatever, for other illnesses. And employers would be asked to make reasonable adjustments, maybe allow flexible hours, that sort of thing. You know, comfortable working environment, you know, well ventilated, screen cover if, you know, if they're affected by strong light, etc. You know, so it is worth making inquiries about what your rights are as a cluster headache sufferer and therefore a disabled person.
Yeah.
So both of those we can provide advice and guidance on. If we don't know, we'll try and find the person who does.
And that's what's needed, you know.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So how would someone sort of contact Ouch?
There's a variety of ways they can contact us. First of all, our website, which is www.ouchuk.org, and you'll find a wealth of information on there. There's also a questionnaire, do I have cluster headache? So you can work out, hopefully, what type of headache you might have. We do stress might, because we're not doctors. We have an advice line, which is 01646 651 979. You can email us on info@ouchuk.org. And for advice on rights and your employment rights and, benefits, you can email on rights@ouchuk.org. Okay, so we're, you know, there's plenty of ways you can contact us. So if you don't like using social media, if you haven't got a computer, you can ring us. You know, we try to keep all of those options available because we're aware that not everybody has all the modern bits and pieces, mobile phones, you know, laptops, computers, Kindles, whatever. So and we have to be there for everybody, because our youngest sufferer we've come across was 1 year old.
Oh gosh,
and
so young.
The oldest, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was 91. So it
just affects everyone.
It's no respecter of age. Generally speaking, first attacks, I'm generalizing here, but usually in your 20s, 30s, something like that. I have to emphasize that I was the rare exception with these starting at about the age of 10. I did know one other sufferer whose experience was very similar to mine. But that's unusual. You do get some child sufferers can be quite intense in their teens, but as they get older, it seems to ease a bit. But my personal experience is that age didn't make any difference because I was over 50 when I became chronic. But since then, I've had an operation, and this. There's a newer version of this that's going to be available soon, but the one that I've got is something called an occipital nerve stimulator implant, ONSI. Basically, it's a small battery that's implanted either in the abdomen or the shoulder. It's about the size of a pacemaker, so half the size of a palm of your hand. From that battery, the wires go up through your body, under the collarbone to the back of the head, and at the back of the head you've got two large nerves, and if you imagine spreading your fingers of each hand on the back of your head, they're called the occipital nerves, and they exit the skull under the skin at the back of the head, and the surgeon puts contact on each of the branches of those nerves, and the battery emits a pulse, which you can feel a gentle tingling at the back of your neck as the pulse is going through. I find it quite soothing, actually. And it cuts down the incidence and the severity of the attacks. My device is rechargeable, so I put on a fancy elastic belt. I look like something out of Star Trek. I put on this fancy elastic belt, and it recharges the internal battery. So, you know, once every week or 10 days. In fact, I've got to do it this afternoon. Once every week or 10 days, I recharge my battery. my family teased me when I had it done because they said I was Wales's first bionic woman.
But you found it helpful?
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
I went from 1 to 6 attacks a day, sometimes more, to 2 or 3 a week.
Oh wow, yeah.
Now,
and I guess that must make such a difference to you.
Right, it made a huge difference. I'm still chronic because I've never gone longer than 10 days without an attack. I am still a chronic sufferer. I still never know when I'm going to have an attack. I get a few minutes warning. I can feel the back of my neck stiffens and I'll start yawning a lot. And sometimes my husband picks up on that more quickly than I do. And he'll say, Val, come on, go and get on your oxygen. And I'll realise then what I'm doing. And as soon as I get to it, the better, you know. But so I still have that, how can I put this? If you've got cluster headache, you lose a freedom that that non-sufferers don't think about. You don't think about it until you've got something that prevents you, you know, doing this particular thing. And for us, we can't just say, oh yeah, we'll go to so and so next week. We'll go to the pictures, or London for a weekend or whatever. We never know when we're going to have an attack, so we have to think in advance. We have to make sure we've got our medication, make sure we've got our oxygen, make sure we've got our information card, just in case. You never know. And you have to think in advance all the time, and travel as well. You know, even in the UK, you would have to arrange oxygen with a supplier in the area that you're going to. That can all be done over the phone with your own oxygen supplier. They're pretty good, set up liaison between the regions and the UK that supply it. And even going out for dinner, I've, 2 or 3 times, I've had to leave a restaurant with a bright red face because I know I've got an attack coming. I can't do it to go and deal with an attack, you know, and go back and pay the bill. Supermarket trolleys, I've abandoned those before now because I've had to go rush back out to my car to have an injection and have some oxygen and just sit for half an hour until I'm clear and ready to go again. You know, it's only a small thing, but you have to think with cluster headache, you have to think in advance a lot of the time. Some people have ended up having to change their jobs. They have lost their homes. They have lost their families, even sometimes. Close family find it very difficult to understand what you're going through. And it does change people's lives totally.
That's why it's great something like, an organization like Ouch exists that can sort of offer the support that people need.
Yes, and I would say that at our meetings, which we have 2 or 3 times a year, the single biggest benefit, because we survey our members afterwards to find out what they thought of it, suggestions for content for future meetings, that sort of thing. We also asked them what they found was of most benefit to them. And most of the time, I would say about 75% of them would say that being able to talk to another sufferer was the biggest benefit to them, because it's very often the first time they have met another sufferer.
Of course, yeah.
And again, it's like with the advice line. It's being able to talk to somebody who understands what you're going through, knows what it's like, understands the pain. You don't have to explain anything. You can talk on a level playing field.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what means the most. And it's quite common to see people, quietly blowing their noses and sniffing into a hanky because they're just so relieved,
Yeah.
Might sound odd, but we're pleased that we're able to, facilitate that it's given them some benefit immediately they arrive,
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I really think our listeners are going to benefit so much from all of that. And
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
No, they really will. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, pleasure.